I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. The words on the screen blurred through my tears, but I had already read them enough times to burn them into my memory forever. "She's been stealing from you, Mom. I have proof. I'm so sorry." My daughter's message sat there, cold and final, talking about Linda, my Linda, the woman who had been my companion, my friend, my caregiver for 3 years. My chest felt like someone had reached inside and squeezed my heart until it couldn't beat properly anymore. The rain started hitting my window harder, matching the chaos inside me. I looked around my bedroom, at all the things I owned, at the life I had built over 72 years, and wondered what else had been a lie. Linda had access to everything. My bank accounts, my medications, my jewelry box, my trust. But let me go back. Let me tell you how I got here, to this moment where everything I believed about kindness and friendship fell apart in a single text message. My name is Margaret Ellen Price, though most people call me Maggie. I'm a grandmother of 5 beautiful grandchildren, a widow of 8 years, and until that night, I thought I was a pretty good judge of character. I lived alone in the same house where my husband Robert and I raised our 2 children. After he passed from a heart attack, the house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories that made me cry into my morning coffee. That's when my daughter Susan suggested I hire someone to help around the house. At first, I said no. I was proud. I could still cook my own meals, clean my own floors, manage my own life. But the truth was getting harder to ignore. My knees ached when I climbed stairs. I forgot to take my blood pressure medicine more often than I remembered. The garden Robert and I had planted together had become a jungle of weeds because I couldn't bend down long enough to pull them. So I agreed. And that's how Linda came into my life. She was 52 years old, with kind eyes and a warm smile that reminded me of my younger sister, who passed away years ago. She had references from 2 other families. She knew how to cook the foods I liked. She laughed at my old stories. She looked at photos of Robert and said he must have been a wonderful man, and she said it in a way that made me believe she really meant it. Within months, Linda became more than just help. She became my friend. We drank tea together in the afternoons. She told me about her daughter who lived in another state, about her ex-husband who left her with nothing, about how hard it was to start over in her 50s. My heart went out to her. I understood what it meant to feel alone. I gave her a key to my house. I gave her access to my bank account so she could buy groceries and pay bills when I was too tired. I gave her the code to my safe, where I kept some cash for emergencies. I gave her my trust completely and without question. And now, sitting on my bed with my daughter's message burning on my phone screen, I realized I had given all of that to a thief. Susan had attached photos to her message. Bank statements showing withdrawals I never made. Credit card charges for items I never bought. Pictures of my mother's pearl necklace, the one I thought I had misplaced, being sold on an online marketplace under Linda's name. The evidence was clear. For at least a year, maybe longer, Linda had been taking from me. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Money, jewelry, even some of Robert's watches that I had planned to give to my grandsons. I felt sick. My stomach turned and twisted like I had eaten something rotten. But worse than the nausea was the feeling of betrayal that spread through my whole body like poison. This woman had sat at my table. She had held my hand when I cried about missing Robert. She had driven me to doctor's appointments and waited in the lobby reading magazines. She had been there for me. Or had she? Was any of it real? Or was I just a foolish old woman, too lonely and desperate for company to see what was right in front of me? The rain got louder. Thunder rolled across the sky. I stood up on shaky legs and walked to my window. The street outside was empty and dark. The streetlight on the corner flickered the way it had been doing for weeks. Everything looked the same as it always did, but nothing felt the same. Nothing would ever feel the same again. My phone buzzed. Another message from Susan. "Mom, please don't confront her alone. I'm coming over first thing in the morning. We'll handle this together. I love you." I typed back with trembling fingers. "Okay, I love you too." But I didn't know how I would make it through the night. Linda was scheduled to come at 8 in the morning, just like she did every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. She would walk through my door with that smile. She would ask how I slept. She would offer to make me breakfast. And I would have to look at her knowing what she had done. I sat back down on my bed and let the tears come. They ran down my cheeks hot and fast. I cried for my stolen money. I cried for my mother's necklace. I cried for Robert's watches. But most of all, I cried for the friendship I thought I had. That hurt more than anything she stole. She had taken my trust, my faith in people, my belief that there was still goodness in the world. The night stretched ahead of me like a long, dark road with no end. I knew I wouldn't sleep. I knew I would replay every conversation, every moment, every time I had defended Linda to my son, who said I was getting too close to her, too trusting. He had been right, and I had been a fool. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside, my heart continued to break. And somewhere between the thunder and my tears, I knew that the woman I was before reading that message was gone. That version of Maggie, the one who still believed in the goodness of others, who opened her heart easily, who saw the best in people, she died that night. I didn't know yet who I would become, but I knew I would never be her again. The night passed in pieces. I would close my eyes, then open them minutes later, my heart racing, the words from Susan's message echoing in my mind. When morning finally came, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. My body was heavy, like someone had filled my bones with concrete while I lay there in the dark. I got out of bed and went through my morning routine like a ghost. Brush teeth, wash face, put on clothes. But nothing felt real. My hands moved, but they didn't feel like my hands. My face in the mirror looked older somehow, as if I had aged 10 years overnight. The lines around my eyes seemed deeper. My skin looked gray and tired. I couldn't eat breakfast. The thought of food made my stomach turn. I made coffee instead and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Linda and I had shared so many conversations. I looked at the chair where she always sat, and I felt anger rise in my throat like bile. How many times had she sat there, smiling at me, while knowing what she was doing? How many times had she looked me in the eye and lied? Susan arrived at 7:30. She let herself in with her own key and found me still sitting at the table, my coffee gone cold in front of me. She took one look at my face, and her eyes filled with tears. She came to me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders, and I let myself lean into her. My daughter. My child. At least I still had this. At least I still had someone I could trust. "Mom," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I was afraid I would start screaming and never stop." Susan pulled back and sat down next to me. She put a folder on the table. "I have everything here. All the evidence. Bank statements, credit card bills, the online posts selling your things. We need to call the police before she gets here." The police. The word felt strange and heavy. I had never called the police for anything more serious than a noise complaint in my entire life. And now I was supposed to call them on someone I had considered a friend. "Mom," Susan touched my hand. "We have to do this. She stole from you. She stole a lot. This isn't something we can just let go." I finally found my voice, though it came out rough and broken. "I know." Susan pulled out her phone and dialed. I listened as she talked to someone on the other end, explaining the situation, giving my address, saying yes, the woman would be here soon. When she hung up, she told me 2 officers would arrive within the hour. They wanted to be here when Linda showed up. The waiting was torture. Susan made me eat a piece of toast that tasted like cardboard in my mouth. She cleaned up my kitchen even though it was already clean. She was nervous too, I could tell. She kept checking her phone, looking out the window, asking me if I was okay. I wasn't okay. I didn't know if I would ever be okay again. At 8:15, the police arrived. 2 officers, 1 man and 1 woman. They were professional and kind, but their presence in my home made everything feel even more real. This wasn't just hurt feelings. This was a crime. Linda had committed a crime against me. They asked me questions. When did I hire her? What access did she have? When did I first notice things were missing? I answered as best I could, but my voice kept breaking. The female officer, whose name was Officer Martinez, had gentle eyes. She told me this happened more often than people thought, especially to older people living alone. She said I wasn't stupid for trusting Linda. She said predators were good at what they did. But her words didn't make me feel better. They made me feel worse. I was a target, a victim, a foolish old woman who had been easy to manipulate. At 8:40, Linda's car pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I watched her get out, watched her grab her purse, watched her walk toward my door with that same confident stride she always had. She had no idea what was waiting for her inside. The doorbell rang. Susan squeezed my hand. The officers positioned themselves where Linda wouldn't see them immediately when the door opened. "Do you want me to get it?" Susan asked softly. I shook my head. "No. I need to do it." I walked to the door. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving. I put my hand on the doorknob. I took a breath. Then I opened it. Linda stood there smiling, holding a bag of what looked like fresh muffins. "Good morning, Maggie. I brought your favorites from the bakery. Blueberry, just like you love." I stared at her, at that smile, at those eyes that had seemed so kind, and I felt something crack inside me. "Come in, Linda," I said. My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. She stepped inside, still talking. "You won't believe the line at the bakery this morning. I thought I'd never." She stopped. She had seen the officers. Her face changed. The smile disappeared. The warmth in her eyes went cold and hard. In that instant, I saw the real Linda, and she was nothing like the woman I thought I knew. "What's going on?" she asked, but her voice was different now too. Defensive. Careful. Officer Martinez stepped forward. "Linda Brennan? I'm Officer Martinez. We need to speak with you about some irregularities in Mrs. Price's financial accounts." I watched Linda's face. I watched her think about lying, watched her calculate her options, watched her decide what to do. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought I saw something like regret. But then it was gone. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. Susan stood up, holding the folder. "We have bank statements, credit card bills, photos of you selling Mom's jewelry online. We have everything." Linda's face went pale. Her hand tightened on the bag of muffins. "Maggie, please let me explain. It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Tell me, Linda. What is it if it's not you stealing from me for over a year? What is it if it's not you taking money from my account, using my credit card, selling my dead mother's jewelry? Tell me what it is." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was going to pay it back. I was in trouble. My daughter needed money for medical bills, and I didn't know what else to do. "You have so much, Maggie. I didn't think you'd even notice." The lie was almost impressive in its audacity. But Susan had already checked. Linda's daughter wasn't sick. She didn't have medical bills. It was all a lie. Everything was a lie. "You're lying," I said quietly. "Even now, standing in my home, you're still lying to me." Officer Martinez took control then. She asked Linda to put down the bag. She asked her to put her hands where they could see them. She read her rights. And I watched as the woman I had trusted, the woman I had welcomed into my life, was handcuffed in my living room. Linda looked at me as they led her toward the door. "Maggie, please." "I'm sorry. I really am sorry." I said nothing. I had no words left for her. After they took her away, Susan held me while I finally cried. Not quiet tears this time, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere dark and broken inside me. I cried until I had nothing left, until my body was empty and my throat was raw. The house felt different after that. Quieter, colder. Like Linda had taken something with her that couldn't be replaced. Susan stayed with me that day, and the next. She helped me change all my account passwords, all my locks, all my codes. She helped me make my home secure again. But she couldn't make me feel secure. That was something I would have to figure out on my own. The days that followed were heavy, just like I knew they would be. I went through the motions of living, but I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark, replaying every conversation with Linda, looking for the signs I had missed, hating myself for being so blind. I stopped answering the phone when friends called. I didn't want to explain what happened. I didn't want to hear them say they were sorry, or worse, say they had suspected something all along. I just wanted silence. I wanted to disappear into the quiet spaces of my house and not have to face anyone or anything. But the silence didn't help. It only made things worse. Because in the silence, all I could hear was my own voice asking the same questions over and over. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see it? What's wrong with me? The silence was eating me alive, and I didn't know how to make it stop. Weeks passed, though I couldn't tell you exactly how many. Time became strange after Linda's arrest. Days blended together like watercolors running on wet paper. I would wake up and forget what day it was, whether Susan had visited yesterday or 3 days ago, whether I had eaten lunch or just thought about eating lunch. My daughter kept calling. My son drove over from the city twice. My grandchildren sent me cards and pictures they had drawn. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay. I told them I was fine. I smiled when they looked at me. I said the right things. But behind that smile lived a storm I couldn't control, and I was terrified they would see it. The truth was I didn't recognize myself anymore. When I looked in the mirror, a stranger stared back at me. She had my gray hair and my blue eyes, but she wasn't me. The real me had been confident. The real me had been strong after Robert died. The real me had survived loss and grief and still believed in goodness. This woman in the mirror was none of those things. She was hollow, empty, a shell wearing my skin. I stopped going to my weekly card game with the ladies from church. When they called to ask why, I made excuses. I was tired. I wasn't feeling well. I had a doctor's appointment. They stopped calling after a while. I told myself I was relieved, but really, I was just more alone. The house felt different now. Every room held memories of Linda. The kitchen where she cooked. The living room where we watched television together. The hallway where she used to hang her coat. I couldn't walk through my own home without seeing her ghost everywhere. Sometimes I thought about selling the house and moving somewhere new, somewhere without memories. But where would I go? And would I just take this broken version of myself with me anyway? The nights became my enemies. I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. I replayed conversations with Linda over and over, looking for clues I had missed. That time she said she couldn't make it to work because her car broke down. Had she been lying? That time she borrowed $40 for gas and never paid it back. Was that the beginning? That time I caught her in my bedroom and she said she was just looking for my laundry. Was she actually searching for things to steal? Every memory was poison now. Every moment we shared was suspicious. I couldn't remember a single interaction with her that didn't feel tainted by what I now knew. And that hurt more than the stolen money. The money could be replaced. But those 3 years of my life, those moments I thought were real friendship, those were gone forever. My son David came to visit on a Saturday morning. I hadn't seen him in 2 weeks, and when he walked in, his face showed his worry. I must have looked worse than I thought. "Mom," he said, hugging me, "have you been eating?" Of course, I lied. The truth was I had lost weight. My clothes hung loose on my body. Food had lost its taste. Everything tasted like dust. We sat in the living room and David talked about his kids, about his job, about normal things. But I could tell he was watching me, studying me, trying to figure out how broken I really was. After a while, he stopped pretending. "Mom, you need to talk to someone. A therapist. A counselor. Someone who can help you process this." I shook my head. "I'm fine, David. I just need time." "It's been almost 2 months. You're not fine. Susan told me you're not answering your friends. You're not leaving the house. You're not even going to church anymore." "Susan talks too much," I said, hearing the edge in my voice. "Susan is worried. We're all worried. What Linda did was terrible, but you can't let her destroy you. That's letting her win." His words made me angry, though I knew he meant well. "You don't understand. You weren't the one who trusted her. You weren't the one who was too stupid to see what was happening." "You weren't stupid, Mom. You were kind. There's a difference. Is there? I felt tears coming but fought them back. I was tired of crying. Because from where I'm sitting, kindness and stupidity look pretty much the same. David reached over and took my hand. Linda was a professional con artist. The police told us she had done this before to other people. You weren't her only victim. She knew exactly how to manipulate people, how to gain their trust. This wasn't your fault. But it felt like my fault. It felt like I should have known better. I was 72 years old. I had lived through wars and recessions and personal losses. I should have been smarter. I should have been more careful. I should have protected myself. After David left, I sat alone in the living room and let myself think about the person I used to be. Before Robert died. Before Linda. I had been happy then. I had been whole. I had known who I was and what I stood for. I had been a good wife, a good mother, a good friend. I had mattered. But now I didn't know who I was anymore. The foundation I had built my life on had cracked. If I could be so wrong about Linda, what else was I wrong about? Could I trust my own judgment? Could I trust anyone? The questions circled in my mind like vultures. I tried to push them away, but they always came back. They lived inside me now, in that hollow place where my confidence used to be. I got up and walked through the house room by room. In my bedroom, I opened the jewelry box that Linda had stolen from. Most of the valuable pieces were gone. What remained were the things she hadn't thought were worth taking. Cheap earrings. A broken bracelet. A ring with a fake stone that Robert had won for me at a carnival 40 years ago. I picked up the ring and held it in my palm. This ring had more value to me than all the real jewelry combined, and Linda hadn't even wanted it. She didn't understand what mattered. She only saw dollar signs. I put the ring on my finger. It was too loose now because my hands had gotten thinner. But I kept it on anyway. It reminded me of a time when I knew how to laugh, when Robert was alive, and the world made sense. In the kitchen, I opened the drawer where I kept recipes. Linda had commented on my recipe cards once, said they were old-fashioned, and I should use a computer instead. I had laughed and told her some things were better done the old way. Now I pulled out the cards and flipped through them. My mother's handwriting on some. My own on others. Robert's terrible spelling on the one he had written for his famous barbecue sauce. These cards had survived decades. They had survived my mother's death and Robert's death. They would survive Linda too. I sat at the table and spread the recipe cards out in front of me. Each one was a memory. Each one was proof that I had lived a real life before Linda came into it. I had loved and been loved. I had cooked meals for my family. I had made birthday cakes and Christmas cookies and Sunday roasts. I had been someone. But who was I now? That was the question that kept me awake at night, that made food taste like nothing, that made my reflection look like a stranger. I didn't know the answer. I didn't know if I would ever know the answer. The sun was setting outside my window. The light was fading from gold to gray. Soon it would be dark again, and I would face another night of lying awake, another night of questions without answers, another night of feeling lost inside my own skin. I gathered up the recipe cards and put them back in the drawer. I turned on the television for noise. I microwaved a frozen dinner that I would eat 3 bites of before throwing away. I went through the motions of being alive. But I wasn't living. Not really. I was just existing, just surviving, just waiting for something to change, even though I didn't know what that something was. My heart grew tired of pretending. Tired of smiling when people looked. Tired of saying I was fine when I wasn't. Tired of being this hollow version of myself. Still, I kept going. Because what else could I do? Susan and David needed me to keep going. My grandchildren needed their grandmother. So I put one foot in front of the other. I woke up each morning. I made it through each day. I hoped that one morning I would wake up and finally feel alive again. But that morning hadn't come yet. And as the days turned into weeks, I started to wonder if it ever would. On a Tuesday morning in early October, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. Not pain exactly, but a pull, like something was tugging at me from far away. The air had turned crisp overnight, and through my window, I could see leaves starting to change color. Fall had always been my favorite season. Robert and I were married in October, 47 years ago. I lay in bed thinking about our wedding day. How young we had been. How certain we were that we could handle anything life threw at us. And we did handle it for 41 years, until his heart gave out and left me alone. But we had been happy. That was the thing I kept coming back to. Despite everything, despite all the hard times and struggles and disappointments, we had been happy. The pull in my chest got stronger. Before I really knew what I was doing, I was out of bed and getting dressed. I put on a warm sweater and my comfortable walking shoes. I ate half a piece of toast and drank some orange juice. Then I got my keys and walked out to my car. I hadn't driven in weeks. Susan had been bringing me groceries and anything else I needed. But the car started fine, and my hands remembered how to hold the wheel. I backed out of the driveway and started driving, not really thinking about where I was going, just following that pull inside me. 20 minutes later, I parked in front of the church where Robert and I got married. I hadn't been back here in years. After Robert died, I had switched to a church closer to my house. It was easier that way. Less memories, less pain. But now I was here, and the building looked exactly the same. Same stone walls. Same wooden doors. Same stained glass windows that caught the morning light and scattered it into colors across the steps. I sat in my car for a long time, just looking at it, remembering. Finally, I got out. The air was cold against my face, but it felt good. It felt real. I walked slowly up the steps, my hand sliding along the railing that Robert had touched on our wedding day. The door was unlocked. I went inside. The sanctuary was empty and quiet. The morning sun came through the windows and painted everything in soft light. I walked down the aisle slowly, my footsteps echoing on the old wooden floor. This was where I had walked toward Robert, toward my future, toward a life I thought would last forever. I had worn my mother's wedding dress. My father had walked beside me, crying even though he tried to hide it. Robert had stood at the altar in a rented tuxedo that was slightly too big for him, smiling so wide I could see it from the back of the church. I sat down in a pew about halfway up. The wood was hard and smooth under my hands, worn down by years of people sitting here, praying here, seeking comfort here. I wondered how many of them had been as lost as I felt now. "I don't know what I'm doing here," I said out loud to the empty church. My voice sounded small and strange in the big space. But as soon as I said it, I realized it wasn't true. I didn't know what I was doing here. I was looking for myself. The real me. The person I had been before Linda, before the betrayal, before the trust shattered into pieces I didn't know how to put back together. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. What had I been like when Robert and I stood at that altar? I had been 25 years old. I had been afraid but excited. I had believed in love and promises and happy endings. I had been brave enough to build a life with someone, to have children, to take risks. Where had that bravery gone? When Robert died, I had been sad, but I had survived it. I had grieved and cried and felt like my heart would never work right again. But slowly, day by day, I had kept living. I had found new routines. I had learned to be alone without being lonely. I had been strong. So when did I become this frightened person who couldn't trust anyone? When did I start seeing threats everywhere? When did I forget that I had survived worse things than Linda's betrayal? I opened my eyes and looked around the church. Light and shadows played across the walls. A painting of Jesus hung near the altar, his hands outstretched, his face calm and kind. I had never been especially religious, but sitting here, I felt something shift inside me. Not peace exactly, but something close to it. A quiet understanding. Linda had taken things from me, money and jewelry and time. But I had let her take something else. I had let her take my belief in myself. I had let her convince me that I was foolish, that I was weak, that I couldn't trust my own judgment. And that was the real theft. Not the stolen money. Not my mother's necklace. But my own sense of who I was. I stood up and walked to the front of the church. I touched the altar where Robert and I had stood together. The wood was cool under my fingers. I tried to feel him there, tried to imagine what he would say to me if he could. He would probably tell me to stop being so dramatic. He would say that everyone makes mistakes, that trusting people isn't a weakness, that I needed to forgive myself and move on. He would kiss my forehead and make me laugh somehow, because that's what he always did. I smiled just a little. The first real smile I'd had in months. "I miss you," I whispered. "I miss you so much." But missing him wasn't going to help me now. Robert was gone. I was alone. And I needed to figure out how to be alone without falling apart. I left the church and walked back to my car. But instead of driving home, I started driving through the old neighborhood where Robert and I had lived when we were first married. The streets were familiar even after all these years. That corner store where we bought milk was now a coffee shop. The park where I pushed Susan and David on swings had new equipment, but the old oak tree was still there. The house where we lived, the first home we ever owned, had been painted a different color, but I recognized it immediately. I parked across the street and looked at it. We had been so poor when we lived there. The roof leaked. The furnace barely worked. We ate spaghetti 3 nights a week because it was cheap. But we had been happy. I remembered laughing in that house. I remembered dancing in the kitchen while Robert made pancakes. I remembered feeling like we could do anything together. An older woman came out of the house and started watering plants on the porch. She saw me sitting in my car and waved. I waved back, then got out and walked over. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said. "I used to live here a long time ago. I was just feeling nostalgic." Her face lit up. "Oh, how wonderful. Would you like to come inside and see it? We've renovated quite a bit, but some of the original features are still there." I hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that. Thank you." Her name was Patricia. She and her husband had bought the house 10 years ago. She walked me through the rooms, pointing out what had changed and what had stayed the same. The kitchen was bigger now. The bathroom had been updated. But the hardwood floors were the same ones Robert and I had walked on. The window seat in the living room was still there, where I used to sit and read while pregnant with Susan. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I just felt grateful. Grateful that I had lived here. Grateful for the memories this house held. Grateful that I had loved someone enough to make a home with them. Patricia made me tea, and we sat at her kitchen table, not the same table, of course, but in the same spot where my table used to be. We talked about the neighborhood, about how it had changed, about the families who had come and gone. She was kind and easy to talk to. She didn't ask me why I was really here, or what was wrong. She just gave me space to remember. When I finally left, I felt lighter somehow. The pull in my chest was gone. I drove home slowly, taking the long way, looking at the streets and trees and houses like I was seeing them for the first time. Back home, I walked through each room of my house with new eyes. Yes, Linda had been here. Yes, there were memories of her in these spaces. But there were so many more memories that had nothing to do with her. This was the house where I raised my children, where Robert and I grew old together, where I had laughed and cried and lived a full life. Linda was just a small, painful chapter in a much bigger story. I went to my bedroom and opened the jewelry box again. I looked at what was left. The cheap earrings, the broken bracelet, Robert's carnival ring that I was still wearing. These things weren't valuable to anyone else, but they were priceless to me. They were proof that I had been loved, that I had mattered, that my life had been real and full long before Linda ever walked through my door. I took out the broken bracelet. It was silver, or had been once. Now it was tarnished and missing stones. David had given it to me for Mother's Day when he was 7 years old. He had saved up his allowance for months to buy it. When he gave it to me, his face had been so proud, so hopeful. I had worn it every day for years until it finally broke. I held it in my hand and remembered that little boy, my son, and how much he had loved me. How much he still loved me. Susan loved me too. My grandchildren loved me. I had a family who cared about me, who worried about me, who wanted me to be okay. Maybe I didn't know exactly who I was anymore. Maybe Linda had shaken my foundation. Maybe I would never be quite the same person I was before. But I was still here. My heart was still beating. I could still remember joy, even if I couldn't quite feel it yet. I put the bracelet back in the jewelry box and closed the lid. Then I went to the kitchen and pulled out my recipe cards again. I chose one of Robert's favorites, pot roast with potatoes and carrots. I hadn't cooked a real meal in months, but I was going to cook one now. As I prepared the ingredients, my hands remembered what to do. Peel the carrots. Cut the potatoes. Season the meat. The familiar motions were comforting. This was something I knew how to do. This was something Linda hadn't taken from me. While the pot roast cooked, filling the house with warm smells, I called Susan. "Mom," she answered immediately, her voice worried. "Is everything okay?" "I'm cooking pot roast," I said. "Your dad's recipe. Come over for dinner tonight if you can. Bring the kids." There was a pause. Then Susan's voice came back softer, warmer. "We'll be there, Mom. We'll definitely be there." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and waited for the pot roast to cook. I listened to the familiar sounds of my house. The hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the clock on the wall. The gentle bubble of the pot on the stove. These sounds had been here all along, but I hadn't really heard them in months. I had been too busy listening to the voice in my head telling me I was broken. But maybe I wasn't as broken as I thought. Maybe I was just hurt. And hurt people could heal. I had healed before. I could heal again. The sun was setting outside my window, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. I had forgotten to notice beautiful things. I had forgotten that the world kept turning even when my world fell apart. I didn't cry this time. I just sat there, breathing in the smell of pot roast, waiting for my family to arrive, feeling my own heartbeat reminding me that I was still here. Still alive. Still capable of cooking dinner and calling my daughter and noticing a sunset. Somehow that was enough. For now, it was enough. Dinner with Susan and her family that night felt like waking up from a long, dark dream. My grandchildren, Emma, who is 9, and little Jacob, who is 6, ran through my house with a kind of energy I had forgotten existed. They hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and for the first time in months, that tightness in my chest felt good instead of painful. "Grandma, we missed you so much," Emma said, her arms around my waist. "Mom said you weren't feeling good, but you look okay now." I smoothed her hair and smiled. "I'm feeling better, sweetheart. Much better." The pot roast was good. Not perfect. I had forgotten how much salt Robert always added, but it was real food, made with my own hands, shared with people who loved me. Jacob ate 3 helpings and told me between bites that I was the best cook in the whole world. Susan kept looking at me with this mixture of relief and worry on her face, like she was afraid I might disappear again if she looked away. After dinner, while the kids played in the living room, Susan helped me clean up. We worked in silence for a while, washing dishes, putting away leftovers. Finally, she spoke. "What changed, Mom?" I thought about the question. What had changed? I had driven to the church. I had visited my old house. I had remembered who I used to be, but that wasn't really it. Something deeper had shifted, something I couldn't quite put into words yet. "I think I got tired," I said slowly. Tired of being angry and scared and sad. Tired of letting Linda win. Susan dried a plate and set it on the counter. "David said he talked to you about seeing someone. A therapist." "He did. What do you think?" I rinsed another dish, watching the soap bubbles slide down the drain. I think maybe he was right. Maybe I do need to talk to someone. Someone who isn't family. Someone who can help me make sense of all this. Susan turned to me, her eyes bright with tears. "I'm proud of you, Mom. I know this has been so hard. It has, I admit it. Harder than I thought it would be. Harder than when your father died, in some ways. Because when he died, I was sad, but I wasn't confused. I knew death was real and final, and something everyone faces. But this thing with Linda, I don't know how to make sense of it. I don't know how to trust myself anymore." "That's exactly why you should talk to someone. They can help you work through that." I nodded. "Will you help me find someone?" "Of course. I'll call tomorrow and get some recommendations." We finished the dishes together, and then we joined the kids in the living room. Emma wanted to show me a dance she had learned at school. Jacob wanted to tell me about his loose tooth. These normal, simple, beautiful moments. I had missed so many of them while I was lost in my own pain. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet again, I didn't feel the usual dread. The silence wasn't as heavy. I wasn't as afraid of being alone with my thoughts. Something had shifted just slightly, but it was there. The next week, Susan helped me set up an appointment with a therapist named Dr. Karen Mitchell. She specialized in helping older adults deal with trauma and loss. I was nervous the first time I walked into her office. Nervous in a way I hadn't been since I was a young woman going to job interviews. Dr. Mitchell was younger than me, maybe in her 50s, with gray hair she wore in a short, practical cut and eyes that seemed to really see me. Her office was comfortable, soft chairs, warm lighting, a bookshelf full of books with titles about healing and growth and resilience. "Tell me why you're here, Margaret," she said after we settled in. And I told her everything. About Robert's death and being alone and hiring Linda and trusting her and the text message that shattered my world. I told her about the sleepless nights and the stranger in the mirror and feeling like I had lost myself. I talked for almost the entire hour, and she just listened, nodding sometimes, asking small questions, but mostly just giving me space to let it all out. When I finished, I felt exhausted but lighter, like I had been carrying heavy bags for miles and had finally set them down. "What you're describing is a betrayal of trust in one of its most damaging forms," Dr. Mitchell said. "Linda didn't just steal your possessions. She violated your sense of safety, your belief in your own judgment, your faith in human goodness. That's profound trauma, Margaret. And it's completely normal to struggle with that." "I keep thinking I should have known," I said, my voice breaking. "I should have seen the signs." That's what our brains do when something terrible happens. We try to find a way we could have prevented it because that gives us a sense of control. But the truth is, Linda was skilled at deception. She targeted you specifically because you're kind and trusting, which are beautiful qualities, not weaknesses. They feel like weaknesses now. I know. But healing isn't about becoming hard or cynical. It's about learning to trust yourself again, even after you've been hurt. It's about accepting that bad things can happen to good people, and it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Over the following weeks, I saw Dr. Mitchell twice a week. Slowly, painfully, we worked through the layers of my pain. She helped me see that what Linda did said everything about Linda and nothing about me. She helped me understand that being betrayed by someone doesn't mean I'm foolish. It means I'm human. But understanding something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. The real breakthrough came one afternoon in late October, almost 3 months after that terrible night when Susan's text message changed everything. Dr. Mitchell asked me to do an exercise. She wanted me to write a letter to Linda, not to send, but just to get everything out. I resisted at first. I didn't want to give Linda any more of my time or energy. But Dr. Mitchell explained that the letter wasn't for Linda. It was for me. So I went home and I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and paper and I started to write. "Dear Linda," I wrote, "I trusted you. I opened my home and my heart to you. I considered you a friend. And you betrayed me in the worst possible way. You stole from me. You lied to me. You made me doubt myself and question everything I believed about people and goodness and trust. I hate you for that. I hate what you did. I hate how you made me feel. I hate that I can't walk through my own house without seeing your ghost. I hate that you took something precious from me, not the money or the jewelry, but my peace of mind, my confidence, my ability to believe in others. But I'm writing this letter to tell you something. You don't get to win. You don't get to destroy me. Yes, you hurt me. Yes, you stole from me. Yes, you changed me. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm going to heal from this, not because of you, but despite you. I'm going to forgive you. Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did was okay. But because carrying this anger and pain is destroying me, and you've already taken enough. I won't let you have my future too. I'm going to learn to trust again. Maybe not quickly. Maybe not easily. But I will. Because the alternative is living in fear for the rest of my life, and that's not living at all. I'm going to remember that before you, I had a good life. I loved and was loved. I survived hard things. I raised children and buried a husband and kept going. You were just one chapter in my story, and you don't get to be the ending. So this is goodbye, Linda. Not with hatred, but with release. I'm letting go of you. I'm taking back my life, my home, my peace. You can't have them anymore. By the time I finished writing, I was crying. But these tears were different from all the others. They weren't tears of pain or betrayal or confusion. They were tears of release, of letting go, of washing something away that I had carried for too long. I folded the letter and put it in an envelope. Then I did something that felt both symbolic and necessary. I took it to my fireplace, the one Robert and I used to sit in front of on cold winter nights. I lit a fire, the first one I'd lit in over a year, and I watched the letter burn. The flames consumed the paper, turning my words into ash and smoke. I watched until there was nothing left but embers glowing in the dark. And with the letter gone, I felt something break loose inside me. The tight knot of anger and hurt that had been sitting in my chest for months finally unraveled. I sat on the floor in front of the fireplace and cried until I had nothing left. But this time, the tears didn't leave me feeling empty. They left me feeling clean. Washed. New. When I saw Dr. Mitchell the next day, I told her what I'd done. She smiled, a real smile full of warmth and understanding. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter," I said. "Like I've been carrying something heavy, and I finally put it down." That's exactly what forgiveness is. It's not about excusing what someone did or saying it's okay. It's about refusing to carry the weight of their actions anymore. "I think I'm ready to start really healing now," I said. "Not just surviving, but actually healing." "I think you are too, Margaret. You've done the hardest part. You've faced the truth. You've felt the pain. You've let yourself be angry and sad and confused. Now comes the part where you rebuild." She was right. Healing wasn't soft or gentle or easy. It tore me open before it closed the wounds. I had to face everything I'd been avoiding, the betrayal, the loss, the anger, the hurt. I had to sit with uncomfortable feelings and hard truths. I had to stop running from my pain and start walking through it. But on the other side of all that pain, I found something I didn't expect. I found forgiveness. Not for Linda, though that came too eventually, but for myself. I forgave myself for trusting her. I forgave myself for not seeing the signs. I forgave myself for being human and imperfect and vulnerable. And with that forgiveness came something even more powerful. Hope. Small and fragile at first, but there. A tiny seed of belief that maybe, just maybe, I could be okay again. Different than before, but okay. That night, I slept through the night for the first time in months. No nightmares. No waking up at 3 in the morning with my heart racing. Just sleep. Deep, peaceful, healing sleep. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through my window. The air felt crisp and clean. I took a breath, a real breath, filling my lungs completely, and it didn't hurt. For the first time in months, breathing didn't hurt. It wasn't peace yet. It wasn't complete healing. But it was the start of it. And sometimes the start is the hardest part. Spring came slowly, the way it always does, sneaking in on the edges of winter with small promises. A warmer day here. A bird singing there. Buds on the trees that appeared overnight. I watched it all from my kitchen window, drinking my morning coffee, noticing things I had stopped noticing during my dark months. It was April now. 6 months since that terrible night. 6 months since my world fell apart. But I was still here. Still standing. Still learning how to be myself again. The legal case against Linda had concluded in February. She pleaded guilty to fraud and theft. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison and ordered her to pay restitution. My lawyer told me I would probably get some of my money back eventually, though not all of it. I told him I didn't care as much about the money anymore. What I cared about was knowing that she couldn't do this to anyone else for a while. Susan had asked me if I wanted to go to the sentencing hearing. I thought about it for a long time before deciding no. I didn't need to see Linda again. I didn't need to hear her apology or watch her cry or feel any satisfaction from her punishment. That chapter was closed. I was writing new ones now. Therapy with Dr. Mitchell continued, though we had cut back to once a week. She had taught me so much about healing and resilience and self-compassion. But the most important thing she taught me was this: healing isn't linear. Some days I would feel strong and confident. Other days the old fears would creep back in. And that was okay. That was normal. That was human. I had started going back to church, though not the one where Robert and I married. I went to my regular church, the one close to home, the one I had been avoiding for months. The ladies from my card game welcomed me back with hugs and kind words and no awkward questions. They just seemed happy I was there. We started playing again every Wednesday afternoon, and I remembered how much I enjoyed their company, their laughter, their stories about their grandchildren and their gardens and their lives. I had also started volunteering at the community center, helping to organize their food pantry. It felt good to be useful again, to help people who needed it, to be part of something bigger than my own pain. And working with people who were struggling reminded me that everyone carries hidden burdens. Everyone has been hurt. Everyone is fighting battles that others can't see. One afternoon in mid-April, David came to visit with his oldest son, Michael, who is 15. They wanted to help me with some yard work. The garden that Robert and I had planted together had become completely overgrown during my dark time. I had looked at it through the window for months, watching it turn wild, unable to make myself go out there and deal with it. But now, with David and Michael's help, we spent the whole day pulling weeds, trimming bushes, planting new flowers. My hands got dirty. My back got sore. And it felt wonderful. Physical work, creating something beautiful, being outside in the sunshine with my family. These simple things filled me up in ways I had forgotten were possible. "Grandma, what kind of flowers do you want here?" Michael asked, pointing to a bare patch near the front porch. I thought about it. In the past, I would have planted Robert's favorites, red roses and yellow marigolds. But I wasn't the same person who planted those flowers with him. I was someone new now. Someone who had survived loss and betrayal and heartbreak and had come out the other side changed but not broken. "Let's plant something different this time," I said. "Something that grows even in tough conditions. Something resilient." Michael smiled. "Like you, Grandma." His words made my eyes water, but I was smiling too. "Yeah," I said. "Like me." We chose lavender and black-eyed Susans and coneflowers. Tough, beautiful plants that could handle whatever nature threw at them. We planted them carefully, watering them in, giving them space to grow. When we finished, I stood back and looked at the garden. It was different from what it had been before, but it was beautiful in a new way. That night, after David and Michael left, I sat on my front porch watching the sun set. The new flowers looked small and fragile in the dirt, but I knew they would grow. They just needed time and care and patience.
Like me. My phone rang.
It was Susan.
"Hi, Mom.
"Just calling to check on you. How was your day?" "It was good," I said. And I meant it. Really good. We worked on the garden. David and Michael were here all day. The place looks better than it has in months. "That's wonderful, Mom."
"I'm so glad." She paused.
"You sound different. Happier." "I am happier."
"Not all the time."
"But more often than before." "Is that okay to say?" "Of course it's okay. Mom, you're allowed to be happy again. You're allowed to heal. You're allowed to move forward." After we hung up, I thought about her words. You're allowed to be happy again. For so long, I had felt guilty about feeling better. Like being okay meant I was forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't matter. But Dr. Mitchell had helped me understand that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant integrating the pain into my story instead of letting it consume my story. Yes, Linda had betrayed me. Yes, it had broken something in me. But I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life defined by that betrayal. I was going to be defined by how I survived it, how I grew from it, how I chose to keep living despite it. I started keeping a journal, something Dr. Mitchell had suggested months ago that I had resisted. But now I found it helpful to write down my thoughts and feelings, to track my progress, to remind myself on bad days that I had already survived so many good ones. In my journal, I wrote about the things I was learning, Like how strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up. How trust isn't about never being hurt, it's about choosing to open your heart again, even after someone breaks it. How healing isn't about returning to who you were before, it's about becoming someone new who carries their scars with grace. I wrote about forgiveness too. How I had forgiven Linda, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. How I had forgiven myself for being human and vulnerable and trusting. How forgiveness didn't mean everything was okay. It just meant I wasn't going to let anger and bitterness poison the rest of my life. One Sunday morning in May, I woke up and realized something remarkable. I had gone an entire day without thinking about Linda. An entire day where she hadn't crossed my mind even once. It was such a small thing, but it felt huge. It meant she was losing her power over me. It meant I was taking my life back. I called Susan and told her. She cried happy tears on the phone. Then she asked me something I hadn't expected. Mom, would you ever consider hiring help again? I know what happened was terrible, but you could really use someone to help with the house and yard and everything. We could be more careful this time. Better references. Background checks. Whatever you need to feel safe. My first instinct was to say no. Absolutely not. Never again. But I stopped myself. Was I going to let Linda's betrayal control the rest of my life? Was I going to let her steal my ability to accept help when I needed it? Let me think about it, I told Susan. I'm not ready yet. But maybe someday. The fact that I could even say, maybe someday, felt like progress. Time didn't erase what happened. It never would. The scars were still there, invisible but real. Sometimes I would see someone who looked like Linda from behind, and my heart would jump. Sometimes I would doubt myself when making decisions. Sometimes the old fears would whisper that I couldn't trust anyone, that I should just lock myself away and never let anyone close again. But those voices were getting quieter. And my own voice, the voice of the woman who had survived loss and betrayal and came out stronger, was getting louder. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I took a watercolor painting class at the community center. I joined a book club at the library. I said yes when my neighbor invited me to potluck dinner. I let myself be part of the world again. Each small step felt like a victory. Each moment of joy felt earned. Because I knew what the alternative was. I had lived in that dark place where joy couldn't reach me. And I never wanted to go back there. On a warm evening in June, almost 9 months after that terrible night, I sat in my backyard watching fireflies dance above the grass. The garden was full and lush now, the resilient flowers I had planted blooming bright and strong. The air smelled like honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear children laughing. I thought about the person I had been before Linda. That woman had been confident, but perhaps a little naive. She had believed that kindness was always returned with kindness, that trust was never misplaced, that bad things only happened to people who weren't careful enough. That woman was gone. But the woman I was now, sitting in her garden, watching fireflies, feeling the warm breeze on her face, she was stronger. She knew that bad things could happen to good people. She knew that trust was a risk, but one worth taking. She knew that being hurt didn't mean being destroyed. I had learned that healing wasn't about going back to who you were before. It was about moving forward into who you could become. The storm that broke me had also taught me how to rebuild. And what I built was stronger than what had been there before. I'm 73 now. I've lived through a war, civil rights movements, recessions, personal losses, and betrayals. I've buried a husband and survived cancer and raised 2 children and watched 5 grandchildren grow. I've been hurt, and I've healed. I've fallen down, and I've gotten back up. My scars have become proof that I survived. Every line on my face tells a story. Every ache in my bones is evidence of a life fully lived. I walk now with quiet strength, no longer seeking who I was, but embracing who I've become. I'm not the same person I was before that night when Susan's message shattered my world. I'm not as trusting, perhaps. I'm more cautious. I'm more aware that people aren't always who they seem. But I'm also more compassionate toward others and toward myself. I'm more grateful for the good things and the good people in my life. I'm more resilient than I ever knew I could be. The pain Linda caused me was real and deep and lasting. But it didn't destroy me. It changed me, reshaped me, made me into someone who knows her own strength, who understands the value of healing, who can look at her scars and see not weakness but survival. So yes, I'm different now. And maybe that's the greatest gift the pain ever gave me. The chance to discover that I'm stronger than I thought, braver than I believed, and more resilient than I ever knew. The fireflies continued to dance in my garden. The summer evenings stretched ahead of me, full of possibility. And I sat there, a survivor, a fighter, a grandmother who had been broken but refused to stay broken. I sat there, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt proud of myself. Proud of every hard day I survived. Proud of every tear I cried that washed away a little more pain. Proud of every morning I woke up and chose to keep going. The night it all began, I thought my world had ended. But I was wrong. It was just ending a chapter. The story continued. And the woman writing the next chapters, that's me. Scarred but standing. Wounded but whole. Different but not diminished. I'm Margaret Ellen Price. I'm a grandmother, a widow, a survivor. And I'm still here, still living, still learning what it means to rise again after falling. My story isn't over. It's just beginning a new part. And this part, I'm writing it with wisdom earned through pain, strength forged in fire, and hope that refuses to die. The fireflies danced on. The warm breeze continued to blow. And I sat in my garden, a garden of resilient flowers, feeling more alive than I had in months. Feeling grateful. Feeling strong. Feeling ready for whatever came next. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all. No matter how broken you feel, no matter how dark the night gets, morning always comes. And with it comes another chance to rise, to heal, to become who you were always meant to be. I'm not the same anymore. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's more than okay. Maybe that's exactly who I need to be.